Welcome to Hip Hop Now Podcast. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Don't disrespect the legend. Hip hop is here to stay. Let's get right into the business.
What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, another podcast specifically designed to keep you caught up on all things hip hop, music, and culture that happened throughout the week. And today we have a special show. You know, it's a bonus episode like we do. It's another ranking, y'all. Another ranking of albums, a tier list, if you will. I've done a number of these over the course of a couple of years. So if there's albums missing from some of those videos, just know they were done a while back. And you can ask me in the comment section what I think about newer albums. But I've done tier lists for Ghostface, Raekwon, De La Soul, Eminem, Snoop Dogg, Nas and Jay-Z, Common, Redman and Method Man, Smith and Wesson recently. But today, we are going to go over and cover one of the greatest hip-hop groups of all time, Debate Your Mama. I didn't say the greatest. I just said one of the greatest. Can't really be denied. But I'm talking about MOBB, AC/DC, Mobb Deep, straight out of Queensbridge, man. Definitely one of my favorite groups. Might be top 5 for me, but I'll explain a little bit later why it sounds shaky on that. Shaky on that. Not that they shouldn't be in your top 5. It's just that, you know, what these tier lists are, these rankings that I do, I don't just go and gather all the album covers and hop in here and try to go off of memory and what I think and what I like and all of that. I go back and listen to all of the albums. So yes, I started at the first album, Juvenile Hell, all the way up to what I believe was their last official album on G Unit Records. So we're going to talk about all that good stuff. But what I need you to do is just to know that you can subscribe to this podcast, whether you listen in audio form on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you're right here on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button because it helps. Hit that like button because that definitely helps. Comment. I try to read all the comments and try to engage everybody, but you know, sometimes brother be busy and you know, things are kind of busy, and that's a good thing, you know. Progress. We should say productive, I should say, not progress. Making progress while being productive. There you go. But also, if you see on the ticker right here on the video, Hip Hop Now Podcast YouTube channel has officially set up memberships. That's right. That means you, whether you are somebody who supported back in the day on Patreon, or you saw the CashApp and you're like, here you go, brother, whatever. Again, I cannot stress this enough when it comes to me and this content. I don't eat off of this. I don't make any money. It's not really monetized, you know, YouTube and stuff. But nevertheless, over the course of the years of this podcast, all the proceeds have gone back into the podcast to improve upon it. From lights to microphones to software. Sometimes let's just say you are the only one giving $5 a month. Your $5 goes towards promoting this podcast on Instagram, on Facebook. And I'm talking about via ads, not me posting. So all of those things add up. They help the podcast grow. So if you would like to become a member, there are perks to being a member. Access to exclusive content, access to videos early. I have some things up my sleeve coming a little bit later, you know. So those people who really are engaged with this content and would like to hear, you know, my thoughts or hear from my guests or hear the topics, whatever it may be, this is your opportunity. So the link to find out all about memberships right here on the channel, including super chats, when I do live streams, the link will be in the description of this episode. And I think I'm also going to pin the link going forward in the comment section right at the very top. So, without further ado, let's get right into this. Now, you're looking at the screen. You see what it is. You see what it is. Looking at the screen. Hold up, I need to change some things because I didn't really do this correctly when I set up this podcast. So you're about to get a little bit of behind the scenes work going on here. A little bit. Let's do this right. Let's do this proper, right? So we're keeping the logo, but also we want to add an official background, and I just happen to have one that may work properly for y'all. You know, fans of Mobb Deep, leave your comments in the comment section below. You know what it is. That kind of does a little bit of justice, but maybe we change the logo too, just to keep it a buck. You know, let's just keep it a buck and change the logo. But did the logo? Oh, we didn't change it yet. Boom, there we go. I don't think that looks better. Okay, so let's just go back to the way we had it. Okay, but you saw the thumbnail. So again, fan of Mobb Deep, leave your favorite records, who you prefer out the crew. You feel Mobb Deep top 10 all time, your favorite albums, because we're getting ready to talk about it. And I'm not doing a bunch of mixtapes and side joints. The only one that I'm choosing to include in their catalog is Free Agents, because it was an album that dropped when I think, what were they on, Loud? Basically in between their deals, but we'll talk about the album and definitely why I consider it a part of this lineage. But let's start with Mobb Deep's actual. Well, first of all, what am I doing, man? I'm messing up. Okay, you see in the categories. I got to explain this to people because they don't know. So we going from the top being the greatest to whack. But because we doing a tier list for Mobb Deep, we had to give them different themes, right? We're not putting GOAT and all that hot and mid and all. We ain't putting that trash there. This is how we going to do it. A great album, a GOAT album, a classic. You speaking the Thun language. Feel me? Thun. A great album. How about that? A great album. Not a classic, but a great album. Infamous. How about that? A good album. And nothing wrong with a good album. You know, some good, some bad on there, but overall, it's a good album. MOBB. That's where we going with that category. Now we start to get to the point where it's like, it's cool, but I really don't like it. Not that much. It's a couple of joints. It's 3 joints, but I really don't like it. Lift you off your feet like ski lifts, okay? That's that category. And the last category, you don't want to be there because that just means it's trash. But in the essence of the Thun language, start punching ninjas in their face just for living. Y'all could continue on. Rest in peace, Prodigy. So there you have it. Those are our categories from highest to lowest. And we're going to start with Mobb Deep's actual debut album entitled Juvenile Hell. When this album was released, they were kids. They were teenagers. And on this album, you can hear it. And one thing I'd like to point out is the fact that the sound of the music is nothing like the Infamous. Nothing like anything Infamous and forward. And that has a lot to do with the times, right? Like around those times in hip hop, let me make sure I officially get the date going right here on my phone because I definitely don't want to misquote anything. Real quick. Yes, I listened to Juvenile Hell in its entirety. I also bought the cassette back in the days, which is also crazy because I don't remember doing that. But I think I bought the cassette for Juvenile Hell after Infamous because I thought they were so dope that I was like, man, I must have missed something. Nah, I didn't miss anything. Juvenile Hell dropped in 1993. East Coast, 1993 versus when Infamous came out in 1995. two totally different worlds, right? 93, sure, Mobb Deep is dropping this album, but Tribe Called Quest is on their second album. I mean, not the second album, the third album, Midnight Marauders, dropping the same day as Wu-Tang's debut group album. But the vibe on the East Coast was kind of rapping like this. Like the songs I like the Peer Pressure remix, Large Professor remix, like they rapping like, you gotta deal with the pressure, got to deal with the pressure, gotta. It was the early 90s, y'all. Everybody was like routine, and yeah, it wasn't that great. But don't get me wrong, this album had a couple of joints on here, like Hit It From the Back was cool, Locked Up in Spofford, Peer Pressure, like I said, Hold Down the Fort was cool also. But in general, at that time, there was just something about this album that wasn't good enough. So, Juvenile Hell, I'll lift you off your feet like ski lifts. Don't play with me, okay? Shorty, y'all too young, okay? It was too young for the game. And I've said this on my podcast numerous times that shout out to WNYC, where I used to work, public radio, if you don't know. They WNYC Studios produced a podcast about Prodigy, and the backdrop was about his health and living with sickle cell, but also they were telling his story, and they had a lot of archive like interviews and things like that from him. And one thing he said about the transition from their debut Juvenile Hell to their sophomore album Infamous was that they made the record they made. It reflected the times, but they didn't understand why it wasn't catching on in the way they thought it should. And then in 1994, they heard Illmatic and they heard Nas, and it was like, I see what we did wrong. So you come to their sophomore album, The Infamous, and this the Thun language. You already knew. Classic material front to back, not one skip whatsoever. Not on this one. Not on this one. And you hear it. You hear the difference. Not only are they a little bit older, right? One album releasing in 93, the other one in 1995, but you hear the growth. Some people don't grow in 10, 20 years, Jim Jones. Did I say that? But some people don't. Some people don't look to grow and adapt. Well, let me take that back. Jim Jones has improved as an MC, but you know what I meant. Not Jimmy. Y'all know what I meant. But I just look at it like it was so remarkable. It wasn't even like it was the same group, because I remember Mobb Deep when they dropped Juvenile Hell, but when they dropped the Infamous, I didn't realize it was the same young cats. Like at first, because their name didn't resonate, because that first album didn't really do anything for me. So it was like, oh, another typical 90s, they had low haircuts, almost like bald heads and all that. Onyx, remember, Onyx was hot around 93-ish and all of that. So it was unremarkable to me, even though there were songs I kind of liked, but it was whatever. But when the Infamous dropped, forget about it. Forget about it. Complete classic. Y'all know the record, Survival of the Fittest, Shook Ones Part 2. Everybody knows that. Give Up the Goods. Temperatures Rising is one of my favorite. I love that joint. Give Up the Goods featuring Big Noyd. Big Noyd had excellent performances on this album throughout. Right Back at You with Ghostface and Raekwon. Remember, the Woo was just out not that long ago. Now here they are on this album. One of the greatest posse cuts of all time. Eye for an Eye, Your Beef Is Mine. Dope track. Mobb Deep spits. Nas probably has the standout performance. A Drug Dealer's Dream, Stash cream, keys on the triple beam, 500 SL green, 95 nickel gleam, condominium, thug dressed like a gentleman, tailor made ostrich for Chanel for my women friend. It's been a while, but just a excellent album. And Q-Tip on the alley-oop really helped Havoc get his production together, especially the drums. The drums on this album and the snares, they're sharp, especially Temperatures Rising. It's almost like too sharp. But again, the infamous, you know it, classic. But how do you follow up a classic, right? You don't have a sophomore slump because your first album wasn't that great. But now, it's Mobb Deep. They're known. You follow it up with another classic. Hell on Earth dropped. When did Hell on Earth drop? 1996. The next year. 2 classics in a row. You see what I'm talking about? Again, Juvenile Hell, even though it had some joints for the time, it was kind of misplaced because hip hop, East Coast hip hop, was shifting. Mobb Deep was like, we shifting too. And they dropped the infamous and then Hell on Earth. Hell on Earth was an album that I wasn't able to get right away because I was in college. And, when I was in college, that took away my almost like weekly trip to the record store because I was doing all these things. And, either you was taking a bus to a mall or getting a ride, or if there was a record store around, I don't know if it had it or their prices were high. It was just all these things. So I was listening, I was air hustling from other people and getting copies. And I remember when my sister bought the CD, and that was the first time I gave it like a really good listen. What makes this album a classic is everything. The Tupac shots. Rest in peace, Tupac, Prodigy. But Prodigy would drop a gem on him. I had the whole New York State aiming at your face. What you think you can't get bucked again, once again, back in the house. Havoc on the beats. This is like prime Havoc as far as being a producer, and prime Prodigy with the bars. Like so many dope records, so many quotables on this whole album. I don't even talk like that. Talking about it gets me excited. So there are people who love the infamous, and I'm one of them. But Hell on Earth was like it was like a darker version of Mobb Deep. Like we're no longer street soldiers. We're made guys now. Okay, that's what it felt like listening to this. And Havoc sound was really refined on this album versus the infamous. Because if I was to describe what Havoc does best when it comes to Havoc's brand of boom bap, he make beats that sound like horror movies, but they hip hop. So they have a darkness to them, and you kind of like nodding, like, yeah, what we about to do. You know what I'm saying? And one of those records for me is like Godfather Part 3. Like it's called Godfather Part 3, but he actually sampled Scarface, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, for that. But again, Method Man's on here. Raekwon's on here again. Nas and Big Noyd on Give It Up Fast. Dope songs like Still Shining. Just a really, really, really dope album. And again, when you hear cats talk about the 90s and get excited, because it was such a time where beats, rhymes, rollouts, even collaboration, everything was competitive and everybody was sharp lyrically. It was a special time, and Mobb Deep dropped 2 classics. Then after that, they had a follow-up, and the tease to this, well, for me personally, the situation with this album, which was their fourth album, Murder Music, was that you had heard that Prodigy was going solo first. And on one of the mixtapes, or probably several mixtapes, there was a song put out called Quiet Storm, and it was only Prodigy rapping. When I tell you, I know people love Keep It Thorough, but the original Quiet Storm is the one. That hands down, that's the one. That's peak Prodigy doing what he does. When you open a record that says, I put my lifetime in between the paper's lines, I mean, that in itself was like, oh, this isn't just shooting on the block. This is a man reflecting off of two classics. So Murder Music, which dropped in 1999, so they waited 3 years for this one because, again, it felt like there was a Prodigy solo coming. But what changed it, I think, was the fact that that record was so dope. That beat sampling White Lines from, I was going to say Funkmaster Flex, Grandmaster Flash of the Furious 5, White Lines, sampling it in a way, again, have it with the dark, thoughtful, dangerous sounding beats. And then the remix with Little Kim just brought it home, and it became a Mobb Deep album. And I'm telling the story like I know that's what happened, but that's how it unfolded for me. So Murder Music, not a classic to me, but infamous. I like it a lot. If someone said they had 3 classics in a row, I would not argue you, because I think people love Hell on Earth so much that they discount what's on Murder Music. And I think it has to do with a pattern you're going to see starting with Murder Music of Mobb Deep seeing commercial success on a real level, right? Like Shook One's Part 2 was a club banger. A couple of their records were club bangers, but Quiet Storm Remix was a club banger. But couple of standout joints. What's Your Poison? This was the first time when I was like, oh, Cormega, I see why they mess with Cormega could spit. He got busy on that record. But then there are other records that probably drove some people crazy, and this is why they don't like them. But I thought most of it was cool. Chinky's on the album, 8 Balls on the album from 8 Ball and MJG. Not to say that they're not good. I think there were just a lot of Mob fans who were accustomed to them collaborating with certain MCs. I know some people are so thirsty to say, oh, just New York MCs. Obviously, Mobb Deep didn't have any discrimination because of who they worked with. But I think some people were just used to the Wu-Tang collaborations, the Queensbridge collaborations, the Queens, like all of that. And Mobb Deep was spreading their wings because around this time, 1999, the game had changed drastically from 1996. It was a Bad Boy done ruled with the dancing and the shiny suits. Rockefeller was following suit. Like, it was like you either got bangers for the clubs or you don't. And I think this was their attempt to do so, but I wasn't mad at most of it. Again, Raekwon's on this album. Again, Chinky's on here twice. That did surprise me. On a joint called Thug Music. I like Thug Music. I like the beat. I hate the hook. Probably, Nas is on here, obviously, Little Kim. But one of the best features of all time on here is Kool G Rap on The Realest. If you haven't heard that ever, please go do yourself a favor and go listen. You want to talk about a dude who is timeless, who is the father of coke rap? It's Kool G Rap, okay? So moving on from that, because we don't want to spend too much time here, to an album that released 2 years later, Infamy. And I'm not going to hold y'all. But this one is lift you off your feet like ski lifts. Who am I kidding? This one is I'm gonna start punching ninjas in their face just for living. Now I know what you're saying, right? Because I like them too. I know what you're saying. I could point out Getaway was a very dope record. Oh, by the way, in between this time, I believe Murder Music, starting with Murder Music, Alchemist was like an official member of Mobb Deep, producing beats, and Getaway was one of his, along with the joint with Coogee Rap on Murder Music, The Realest. But I liked Getaway, right? I liked The Learning with Big Noid. I thought that was dope. There were other records I liked on here, but guess what? Infamy is the album one. They took that we have to make club records way too far. Considering the amount of albums that had dropped before then that established the sound, and I think this was where Mobb Deep shifting backfired, right? Because remember, with Juvenile Hell, they was like, this ain't really it. Let's switch. And then they dropped two classics and a great album after that. That's three joints, to basically, let's put it this way, you like 3 and 1 in the 90s. And now it's the 2000s and all these things have happened. Pac shot and killed, Big shot and killed, other rappers emerging like DMX, again, Rockefeller, Eminem and 50 Cent and all of them around the corner. They're not there yet, but they around the corner. So Mobb Deep being teenagers in 93 or like, okay, well, we're established. But the other thing that happened, and this album didn't help, was that Jay-Z said, I'll kill you, I'll crush you. What did he say? I'll crush you mother ants with a sledgehammer. And he was talking about Mobb Deep. And he put Prodigy up on the Summer Jam screen. He said, you was a ballerina. I got the pictures. I seen you at Summer Jam. People went crazy. He wasn't a ballerina. He obviously was in a dance studio. I think his grandmother owned a dance studio. But it worked because, quite honestly, Jay-Z wasn't Jay-Z when he was a kid either. Like, just because you dancing, like, come on, man. But at the time, he was a ballerina. We were like, oh. And what made it worse was this album should have been hardcore Mobb Deep, and it was trying to be two-step Mobb Deep. And the records weren't hitting. Mobb Deep's club hits were always their joints that were like the hardcore songs also, but it was a different time where some of that stuff wasn't flying, like Quiet Storm Remix with Lil' Kim was lightning in a bottle. And this album had joints, right? Like some people like that joint with 112. I think it's cool. I think that's the only thing they should have made like that, because everything else kind of sound corny. And then Jay-Z tried to make them look corny. And what made it extra worse was we were used to a certain level of rapping from Prodigy. And I was waiting for the Prodigy response. Again, on Hell on Earth, his response to Tupac had me like, woo, this is a response. His response to Jay-Z on Infamy was like, I peeled that fruit. It just wasn't it, man. And the album wasn't it. So that's why it happened the way it happened. But then after that, I believe, now I don't know, to be honest, but, okay. I'm getting ahead of myself. Don't forget to subscribe. If you like, comment, let us know what you think about all these albums, the rankings, current rankings that we're having here. Put your rankings in the comment section. I want to check them out. But America's Nightmare dropped. And I'm not going to hold y'all. When it dropped, again, what year was that? 2004, right? So a couple of years after Infamy. At the time, I didn't really get to hear the album. And again, I'm not trying to be no hip hop snob, but I feel like a lot of when a lot of my favorites had great albums early on, I'm talking about even if you had a handful of them, if a decade is probably passed, I don't know if I'm checking for you in the same ways. Now I'm checking for you. I'm just not like, ooh, new Mob, let me go get it, because Infamy left a bad taste in my mouth. I was like, why would they do that? America's Nightmare, I had to listen to it in its entirety probably maybe a decade ago for something else. And I was like, it's not bad. This was a comeback. So MOBB, America's Nightmare is a good album. It was Mobb Deep course correcting once again. Now they didn't course correct into a classic, but it felt like what they do, what they should be releasing. And I loved a lot about it. Like Win or Lose is on here. Come on, man. That record is dope. Another record I like that is the type of club banger I'm talking about is Got It Twisted. That's what I'm talking about, Mobb Deep. Havoc verse on there, crazy. Catch me in the club with a double edged banger. I'm the wrong one to with. Now I know the promoter. I'm in with the musket. Something weed and a pound of Dutchess. High to the cotton mouth. Make the wrong move and your ass is out. I'll mash you out. Woo! Havoc got busy on that record. I'm telling y'all. But again, there's a couple of joints on here. Like I like On the Run. I like We Up. Real N Words. Flood the Block. Like I even like the Nate Dogg feature on here. But now I don't like Real Gangsters with Lil Jon. It don't have nothing to do with Lil Jon. But at some point, it was like Lil Jon must have moved into Queensbridge, because between this and the Braveheart song, and I think the Braveheart song with Lil Jon was a hit. It was just like, nah, man, why we doing this? Like, why we doing this? Collaborate with somebody who fits your style, so it sounds like it works. But then also they did a Got It Twisted remix with Twista, and that's dope. So that's what I mean. Take the collaborations that work. Forget about where people are from and all that stuff. If you hear the music and you like, yo, that mixes Mobb Deep, then cool. All right. So there you have it. I think America's Nightmare is MOBB. And I know a couple of Mob fans who never even got to that one. And I was one of them at one point. All right, two more. So at this point, I'm assuming either Mobb Deep's contract was up or they got dropped. I don't know. Leave the comments in the comment section below. But in between looking for a new deal, and they've talked about this in interviews, before they got to G Unit, they put out a project called Free Agents, and I'm not going to hold you, man. This is infamous. The album consists of, I guess, a couple of Lucy's. It was a double CD also, but a couple of, records that they had on the cutting room floor, probably some new joints they made specifically for this, and then a bunch of freestyles over their old beats. And it's just really good. It's just really dope because it's like a side mission from their album releases. And sometimes side missions with artists don't be a good idea. Sometimes it's a terrible idea. But with Mobb Deep, it fits right in line with what you expected from them, especially when it came to Infamy, right? Infamy was a disappointment like crazy. And again, I said it before, of course there's joints on there, some all-time joints on there, but it's like a roller coaster, It is. It just is. So there you have it. And then finally, Mobb Deep got a deal, got some money, You know what I'm saying? 50 Cent took care of him. 50 Cent was hot at the time. Real quick, did I even say? Yeah, I said 2004. I believe Free Agents was 2005. But in 2006, Mobb Deep dropped their G Unit album and what I consider their final album, because there's been mixtapes and lost and founds and hits and misses and stuff like that. But Blood Money dropped on G Unit Records. I was hyped because I just assumed like, yo, this is going to be crazy because 50 know what Mobb Deep is and he's not going to try to change them. But he kind of did. Now hear me out. This album, to me, is MOBB. But the reason why it can't get any higher and it's kind of stuck there is because with the records that are on this album, there's so many that are so dope, but it feels like Mobb Deep did not belong with G Unit or G Unit Records because the influence is heavy. It felt like the majority of the beats were beats that, 50 and Banks and all of them were rapping over, which were dope beats because they know how to pick beats, but it wasn't Mobb Deep. You know how I described Havoc's production earlier? It wasn't enough of that. Now they did have a record because it was one of the first records I heard, put them in their place where I was like, yeah, this Mobb Deep. But when the album dropped, the G Unit feature, first of all, 50 Cent is on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 songs. 5 songs with 50 on it. Then Young Buck is on a song. That song is trash too. Give It To Me. Yeah, that doesn't. Everything we know now, that whatever. Lloyd Banks is on a record, but Banks could rap, and he sound like he would be on a G Unit joint. Again, Tony Yayo, that song wasn't bad. And even in some of the 50 joints, like I love Pearly Gates, the Infamous. I think that's the record where 50 got busy. Like, then there's Mary J. Blige is on here, but that's not the biggest issue. Nate Dogg's on here. I kind of don't like that record. And then again, really, it's an album that's and this is the other thing I know is real quick. It felt like previously Mobb Deep records, the majority of the time, almost always started with Prodigy rapping first. And at some point, and I didn't go back to the albums to see if I would catch that pattern, but I think it was there on some of those later albums where Havoc was going first. Now, to me, Havoc got better. He was better than Prodigy at some point as an MC on these albums, right? It was like Prodigy lyrically peaked like after Murder Music, and then Havoc took over for the other albums as the lead MC. I told you that verse on Got It Twisted is crazy. But on this album, it just felt like they didn't belong over there. It felt like G Unit was a thing that was happening and it had a specific sound. And even some of the hooks were like, if you take Havoc's voice out and you put 50's voice in there, it sounds like G Unit stuff. And I like G Unit, but I like G Unit for G Unit. Mobb Deep is different. Mobb Deep is sacred. Okay. So there you have it. That is my ranking. Just to recap, when it comes to the classic section of Thun Language, their sophomore album, The Infamous, their third album, Hell on Earth, hands down to me, classics. Great albums from Mobb Deep's collection that I rate Infamous, Murder Music, and the double CD mixtape kind of sort of Free Agents. Then 2 good albums in the catalog. MOBB, that's the category. America's Nightmare and Blood Money. Regardless of everything I said, the majority of it is dope. Just doesn't give you those Mobb Deep vibes that you're accustomed to on the previous albums. Juvenile Hell, Mobb Deep's actual first album, is not great. Probably got 3 or 4 decent songs for the time, but you had to be there. You listen to those songs now after listening to all those other albums, you're going to be like, who is this? But if you were there, you'd be like, nah, I remember when they used to rap like that. And lastly, Infamy, right? Ironically. Infamy, an album that I was anticipating, and it wound up being the exact opposite of what I thought it was going to be. And the song Burn was like fool's gold. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like they were tricking you. Because when I heard Burn, I'm like, they back. Then I started hearing other records like, what's this? So there you have it. That's my ranking. Again, leave your comments in the comment section below. Leave your album ranking below. It's about sharing our thoughts. So share your thoughts. Hit the like button, subscribe button. Follow me on social media at Vegas World INC. And most importantly, know this. When you hit that share button, share it with people you know would enjoy this kind of content. Until next time, y'all, I'm not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace. Y'all can continue on.